When most of us think of Pixar, hopefully we don't think of death scenes. However, there are quite a few of them. We've taken a look back to find out what the characters actually said in those final moments. But be warned, there are major spoilers and probably some tears ahead. Pixar's The Incredibles is filled with some seriously iconic lines, and most of them belong to the legendary Edna Mode. In one of her more memorable moments, the superhero costume designer told Mr. Incredible that he should never wear capes. She explained that capes were too dangerous, as they always got caught on something, resulting in grisly deaths. Well, Edna was clearly onto something. At the end of the movie, after a long battle, the villain's syndrome threatens the family's youngest child. Of course, Mr. Incredible has an understandable response, as we hear Syndrome's final words.
This isn't the end of it! I will get your son eventually! I'll get your son! Oh
no. Just as Edna had warned, another super being meets a terrible fate because of a long, flowing cape. The Good Dinosaur tells the story of a young dinosaur, Arlo, who is crippled by fear. When Henry, Arlo's father, takes him on a journey alongside a river, he explains to Arlo that he just wants him to get past his fear. Unfortunately, a tragic accident is on the horizon. In his final minutes, Henry has a touching heart-to-heart with his son.
I know you have it in you.
But I'm not like you.
You're me and more.
Suddenly, before Arlo has time to process what his father just told him, a storm intensifies and they have to run for cover. Unfortunately, Henry finds himself trapped and only has time for a couple words before he tosses his son to safety.
Run, Arlo!
While this tragic Pixar moment seems to be the end for Henry, Raymond Ochoa, who voiced Arlo, told HuffPost, "They always leave it open. In some movies, such as The Lion King, you see Mufasa die. But in this movie, you really don't. He's swept away, so there's always the opening to bringing Papa back." The Pixar movie Coco follows a young Mexican boy who dreams of becoming a musician and travels to the land of the dead. On his journey, he meets his idol, Ernesto de la Cruz, a famous singer. It turns out, Ernesto isn't exactly who he says he is. The villainous singer actually dies twice in this movie. The first time is when a huge bell falls on him at the end of a performance of his hit, Remember Me. His final words are the lyrics of the song, "Until you're in my arms again, remember me." The second time he dies, Ernesto's skeleton is taken by a spirit creature and flung out of a stadium where he had been performing Remember Me. Inevitably, he is flung straight into a huge bell, which then crushes him once again. Up tells the story of an older widowed man, Carl, who turns his house into a makeshift aircraft with thousands of helium balloons. The old man sets off for Paradise Falls, a remote location in Venezuela, with Russell, a young boy who accidentally comes along for the ride. Carl soon meets his childhood hero, explorer Charles Muntz. But Muntz turns out to be an evil villain who wants to take a rare bird home with him. Ultimately, Carl decides to rescue the bird and stand up to Muntz. As Carl tries to escape Muntz's gigantic flying zeppelin, the two old men get into a fight. Before too long, Muntz barks out his final words.
Enough! I'm taking that bird with me! Alive or dead!
Eventually, Carl, Russell, and the bird get away just in time, while Muntz accidentally falls a long way to his death. Since Coco is largely set in the land of the dead, it naturally features a lot of, well, dead people. One of these characters is Hector, who turns out to be the young protagonist's great-great-grandfather. He also turns out to be the original author of the song Remember Me, a tune that the villain Ernesto de la Cruz steals. However, when he decides to return home to his family, Ernesto comes up with a diabolical plan. In a shocking scene, Ernesto pours Hector a poison drink so he can steal his songs and his guitar. Hector's final words are,
"I'm going home, Ernesto. Hate me if you want, but my mind is made up."
Of course, he never makes it home. The audience even sees him collapse in the street. Plenty of critics were shocked by the scene. A reviewer for Cinema Blend wrote, "I found the decision to include this scene in this way an incredibly brave move from Pixar and director Lee Unkrich. It's a powerful moment, not just in Coco, but in animation." A Bug's Life is an early Pixar film that focuses its narrative on a colony of ants. In order to pacify the local grasshoppers, the ants must collect food for them every year. When Flick accidentally loses all of the food, he is banished from the colony. He eventually returns with a fake bird contraption operated by ants and designed to frighten the grasshoppers away. His plan almost works until Hopper, the lead grasshopper, discovers the truth. But when he's in the middle of threatening Flick, another bird shows up. At this point, Hopper skeptically delivers his last words.
Another one of your little bird tricks? Yep. Are there a bunch of little girls in this one too? Hello, girls!
Sadly for Hopper, this bird is all too real and quickly drops him into her nest where he is devoured by her hungry chicks. Finding Nemo starts with Marlin and his partner Coral joyfully chatting about their future. They've just moved into a new home and they have what looks like hundreds of eggs. The pair couldn't be happier. In their exchange, Marlin and Coral discuss baby names. Marlin suggests naming half of the baby fish Marlin Jr. and the other half Coral Jr. Coral muses that she likes the name Nemo. The happy couple then tease each other, not knowing these will be Coral's last words.
You remember how we met?
Well, I try not to.
Unfortunately, the joking comes to a sudden end when they realize that a barracuda is ready to make a meal out of them. Coral jets down to protect her babies. Sadly, she and almost all of the eggs don't make it, except for the one survivor who would become Nemo. The final death in Pixar's Coco is definitely heartbreaking, as it's of Mama Coco, the elderly matriarch of the family. Coco, Miguel's great-grandmother, is the daughter of Hector, whom Miguel meets in the land of the dead. In the movie, Coco seems to be suffering from dementia. However, by the end of the film, she remembers her father when Miguel returns to the land of the living and sings Hector's song, Remember Me, to her. As one fan wrote for the New York Times, the repeated occurrences of Remember Me are not just a clever play on the movie's themes of recollection and family. Remember Me is a gut punch that fittingly lingers long after it's gone. Sadly, Mama Coco dies shortly after this scene, and her death is bittersweet. In her last words, she says that her papa was a musician, and she kept all of his letters and poems. Then she reminisces about his music.
When I was a little girl, he and Mama would sing such beautiful songs.
It's extremely touching to see Mama Coco remembering her father and, as the movie suggests, keeping him alive in her memory. Inside Out tells the story of Riley, a young girl who moves to a new city and has to deal with all the emotional challenges that come with growing up. Riley's emotions are played out through a series of characters, such as joy and sadness. But when Riley's core memories get lost and tainted with sorrow, joy and sadness leave their emotional control room on a quest to help Riley get back to normal. On their way, they meet Bing Bong, Riley's old imaginary friend. When Bing Bong and Joy fall into the pit of discarded memories, he sacrifices himself. Before he fades away, Bing Bong utters his last words.
Take her to the moon for me, okay?
As actor Richard Kind, who voiced Bing Bong, explained to MTV News, his character's death symbolized that Riley was growing up and moving on from childish things. Apparently, his original death scene was even sadder. Kind went on to explain, "When I first saw the movie, the scene down in the valley where the memories have been lost and disposed of was about 40 seconds to a minute longer. It was absolutely heartbreaking, and I likened it to the scene in Bambi when his mother dies." Rod Torque Redline isn't a major character in Cars 2, but he is a memorable one. Rod is a spy who seems like he'd be perfectly at home in a James Bond movie. Sadly, Rod is tortured and killed by the villain Professor Z. His death makes it absolutely clear to viewers that Professor Z is a seriously dangerous car. This disturbing scene is actually pretty upsetting, especially for a Pixar film. And Rod's final words make it even harder to watch. After Rod refuses to give up any information, Professor Z threatens him with cracking his engine block and forcing oil into his combustion chamber. Rod defiantly responds,
What do I care? I can replace an engine block.
Shortly after that moment, Professor Z turns up the heat and Rod only has a chance to yell out "no" before he explodes. While viewers are spared the sight of Rod's death, we do see flames in the reflection of a nearby screen. Chicharrón is a relatively small character in Coco. He is an old man in the land of the dead and a friend of Hector's. While he's already dead, his permanent death, in which he disappears from the land of the dead, occurs because all of his living relatives have passed away, and he's no longer remembered in the land of the living. In a sad scene, he tells Hector that he's fading and asks him to play his favorite song. As the song ends, Chicharrón speaks his final words to Hector.
Brings back memories. Gracias.
These last words are particularly poignant as the whole film is about keeping people's memories alive after they are gone. Doc Hudson is a major character in the first Cars movie, as he is a famous old race car. However, when Paul Newman, who voiced the character, passed away before the second Cars movie, the writers decided to write Doc out of the sequel. His last appearance was in the Cars credits, when he appears to drive off a cliff after Lightning McQueen tells him, "I know all your tricks." For a couple seconds, McQueen seems worried as he approaches the cliff's edge. Moments later, Doc comes roaring back and he says, "Not all my tricks, rookie." Chef Gusteau is an important character in Ratatouille, but he actually dies before the movie begins. Most of what we see of Gusteau is in Remy the Rat's imagination. However, in one pivotal scene, Remy discovers Gusteau's will, his final words in a way, which says that the entire Gusteau's restaurant emporium should go to his heir. As Remy reads another secret letter, he discovers that Linguini is Gusteau's son and rightful heir. This means that Linguini and Remy can take over the restaurant. While we don't see Gusteau's actual death, we do hear about it. Apparently, Gusteau died of a broken heart after losing 2 stars from his restaurant. In an old interview with Gusteau that Remy watches on TV, he describes what's needed for someone to become a top chef. He says that you must try things that may not work, and you must not let anyone define your limits because of where you come from. Your only limit is your soul. In the final words of the interview, Gusteau says,
What I say is true. Anyone can cook, but only the fearless can be great.
Pure poetry.
Leland Turbo is yet another car who is killed in the spy thriller Cars 2, and his demise comes in the first few minutes of the film. Leland is a secret agent who is in the middle of a transmission to Finn McMissile when he is discovered. Unfortunately, most of his first words in the movie are also his last.
Finn, I need backup, but don't call the cavalry, it could blow the operation. And be careful, it's not safe out here. Transmitting my grids now. Good luck.
It becomes clear that Leland's cover has been blown, but Finn doesn't realize this and travels to their rally point. Finn only discovers Leland's dark fate when he sees that he's been crushed into a metal cube. According to Professor Z's henchmen, that's what happens when you stick your bumper where it doesn't belong. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more list videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.